waiting for the thumbs up that we are on. Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. Thank you very much to members for your attendance this morning and to officers for joining us for the business of this meeting. So I'm going to start with apologies for absence at number 1. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Apologies from Councillor Noaz, substituted by Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much. And do we have any declarations of interest that members need to make on any items on the agenda? Let's just carry on, I think. Thank you. It probably saw my face and broke. Declarations of interest, none? No, thank you very much. Now we have the minutes of the previous meeting, our meeting of the 28th of August. Can I see support for accepting those on the grounds of accuracy? Thank you very much. And I'd just like to make the point that we have in the past had the useful discipline of appending the answers from the board to any questions we put to the board at the to these papers. We seem to have lost that discipline a bit. And at last month's meeting of the board, we asked some questions about the IMET building. And in among the answer to that was an offer by the Chief Executive to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to assist in the development of an accommodation strategy. So I will be raising that when we come to our work plan in case members wish to take that up, but I just ask that in future those answers do get included in our papers because they are useful. So moving on then to item 4, public questions. I believe we still have none. Item 5 was going to be transport update, and that was indeed the main reason for our meeting. However, unfortunately, due to sudden and unavoidable absence, we are unable to take that item today, which is clearly very disappointing, but inevitable. So I would propose that we defer that item to our meeting in October. Can I see those in favour of deferring that item, please? Thank you very much. We move on then to our own work programme at item 6, and we have a report and some attachments to that. Are you going to introduce that for us, please, Robert Fox? Thank you.
Good morning, members. The paper you've received there for the item on the work programme reflects the conversations the committee had at the last meeting, and also builds upon that, focusing on the work that the CFGS, Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, performed for the committee, and reflecting upon the guidance document the CFGS produced for overview and scrutiny in combined authorities, and in particular the area around shortlisting of topics, which is reflected in the paper. The idea of this paper is to give the committee some more focus and rigour to work programming, building upon that work of the CFGS, and to get the committee to plan and manage its activities more effectively, strategically, and to ensure the ongoing development of the scrutiny function within the combined authority. If I draw your attention to paragraphs 2.8 onwards, on page 16 onwards of the paper, this reflects the scoping document that's produced as an appendix to the paper. And also the last meeting of the committee suggested future items for the committee's work programme, namely affordable housing, active travel, the devolution bill, the CAM, and e-scooters. And perhaps given the postponement of the transport item and the deferment of the transport item to the next meeting of the committee, it could be an opportune time to use the scoping document if the committee is minded to agree the use of the document, to produce some scoping documents, maybe for some of those transport items, active travel, e-scooters, for example, and to be prepared in advance of the next meeting to be presented at the next meeting to help populate the work programme moving forward. So I'll open it up to the chair to get the committee to discuss.
Thank you very much indeed, Robert. We're asked to do two things with this item today. We're asked to discuss and agree items for the work programme, and we are asked to discuss and agree the scoping document that we have as an appendix. Can I just quickly cover off the second item first? Does anybody have any comments on the scoping document? Any views on, firstly, whether in principle we should use such a document, and secondly, whether there are any specific comments or questions on the scoping document? If we cover that off fairly quickly, then we can concentrate on the other item, I think, would bear more discussion. Councillor van der Weyer.
Yes, I think the scoping document is very, very helpful for thinking about how to focus particular work of this committee. I would certainly support it. As we agreed at the last meeting, we were going to look at sort of using it for something on affordable housing. In addition to some time constraints on my part, there's been some changes in sort of policy and on housing, both within the combined authority. That's going to be discussed on Wednesday and with government on this. So it's not possible to sort of finalise an example on housing, but alongside the transport ones, I think it's still worth continuing to attempt to do so. Because it does, yeah, as Robert was implying, impose a good discipline on our work, so I'd support it.
Thank you very much. Anybody else want to? Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a perfect solution to starting us off, but if we can just reserve the right, if we need to change it or to add to it, that we should be doing that as part of our ongoing work.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that as we start to use it, we will find.
Yes, I should have actually said it. The purpose of the document is not for it to be, you know, a diktat. It is an iterative process, and as reviews move on as well, that the actual scoping documents will move as well. So yeah.
Totally. Thank you, Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly touching on what Councillor Coles was saying. I think we should use it, but as we should include in it, which is towards the bottom of it, the subjects and the topics that we requiring to be included in the report, rather than just saying we want to report on transport or on skills. We should say these are the specific areas we need to be addressed in the report. That way we're actually sort of dictating what we want out of it, rather than just necessarily, I'm not saying this happens all the time, but getting a report from an officer who may think this is what we want, but we're actually hopefully homing in on the areas of concern that we've got.
Yeah, thank you. So are we content to adopt the scoping document and use that and amend and adjust it as we see fit over time and the experience of use requires? Excellent. So then on to the other part of this paper, which is the work programme. Does anybody have any suggestions, observations to make on our work programme? I'm not seeing any hands at the moment. I thought that would be the subject of more eager debate. As I mentioned earlier, I think we ought to take up the suggestion of contributing to work on an accommodation strategy for the combined authority. It seems to me an opportunity to make use of the rapporteur suggestion that came from the review of our overview and scrutiny arrangements, and to trial that and see how it works. If you would like us to do that, could I have any volunteers to take that on and come back to us, perhaps using the scoping document to consider what we need to do for that. Councillor Goldsack.
Thank you, Chair. I'd be happy to take on that responsibility if committee felt that I could do a job.
Thank you very much. You know what they say about volunteers and pressed men. So if you're happy with that, Russia for advice.
Thank you, Chair. Just to note, Chair, the committee hasn't yet approved the rapporteur role description, which is a later paper. Chair, so if we could do that first, that'd be grateful.
Yes, let's assume that the offer by Councillor Goldsack to do that is contingent on us agreeing to have rapporteurs. If we don't have any rapporteurs under item 7, I'm sure he can do it under the title of lead member for Combined Authority Internal Services or something like that. We can find a suitable hat for that piece of work to be done. Thank you very much. For the next couple of months in our work programme, obviously we will want to defer the transport item to next month, and we will make arrangements to do so and make sure that that is covered off. And there already have been a number of questions collated by councillors Davey, Bagent and Hay on that from you all. This is now therefore an opportunity to add to those questions. And I think we've had a number of questions already arising through looking at the forward plan. So once we come to the forward plan, we might want to add to those questions. In the meantime, if you have additional transport questions for our deferred item for next month, do please send them to those 3 members. That's councillors Hay, Bagent and Davey, doing them in reverse order this time, so that we can ensure we've got a good wide-ranging set of questions that covers members' concerns. November will be our first trial of the Mayor's question time, on the assumption that we're going to agree the process for that at our next item. So we will be looking, I'm sure, for items for December, and I'm trying to remember whether there have been any suggested for a December meeting. I think there will be some issues coming up, possibly some climate related items, and possibly developments in housing and transport. Councillor Dew.
Can I suggest for the future, there's nothing here particularly at the moment, but obviously the skills remit we need to bring back in some form. I think we should get something on the agenda for that. Not sure specifically what at the moment, but obviously we've got the University Quarter at Peterborough, but there are other areas of need throughout the county, and obviously the IMET falling away. That was supposed to provide a county-wide service almost, and how that's going to be dealt with. So I think we should have something in for that.
Thank you very much. I'll turn to Councillor Coles maybe for comment on that.
Yes, I think it's relevant. We've got the review of the underspend as a result of the COVID issues around skills training. So that's going to be an interesting one to look at once that meeting has taken place. We'll probably have something to do there.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Councillor Miscannon.
Thank you. On the skills subject, about apprenticeships, is the Combined Authority pushing for apprenticeships? I know the colleges are building up to engineering apprenticeships and being an ex-engineering apprentice many years ago, more years than I care to remember. But it's quite right. We need to understand what's being posted, because not everyone is college material, and the old children going to businesses and learning the trade on the hoof, so to speak, and getting forward that way. So we need to understand that moving forward with apprenticeships.
Thank you very much. And as our joint lead member on skills with Councillor Coles, I guess the two of you are perfectly placed to go away and ask that question. Thank you very much. So we've got Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. One thing I'd find useful, and we used to have it, and it may be because we're looking at the work programme now, is having a list of future meetings where we can see what may be coming up at the end of the. We normally have that as part of the agenda, so from my point of view, that would be useful. And the other things to add would be, I didn't hear anybody mention housing, because I think as a future topic, because I think that's a very I've certainly got some concerns about what's happened since the previous mayor to the new mayor, and I'm not clear on what his proposals are for that. So it may be that we can flesh some of this out in November at the mayor's question time, but maybe a separate paper on housing I think would be very useful. So that'd be another meeting topic.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. I think the issue is that we're currently in a period of some uncertainty, other than the one thing we do know is from the papers for Wednesday's board meeting is that we will not use the 100 million that was originally granted 5 years ago. We will not achieve the 2,000 houses that were intended to be achieved with that, and that there will not be a further tranche of money after the initial 100 million is used up by March 2022, which does rather beg questions about the way forward for the combined authority, how it contributes to the affordable housing agenda, the value of defining principles for affordable housing as it was beginning to do, if the landscape is going to be so very, very different. So perhaps the function of our lead member would be to keep an eye on that as it develops, to get some sense of the timetable for thinking how we move differently as a combined authority on that, and then coming back to us with suggestions as to the opportunities at which we can input on that. And on the first point, Councillor Sharp, yes, absolutely, we need to get an agenda, a forward plan of our own. The purpose of this item is to start populating that forward plan so that we can have one that we can then review meeting by meeting. Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Chair. I was just thinking more strategically about the impact of everything that we've seen on finance. It might well have an ongoing effect in all of the different areas. And perhaps we need to look at that as a separate item about the activities that are being delivered across all the different councils, and whether the financial issues that exist currently might impact negatively on further work.
Thank you. And yes, that we will also have our usual 3 bites at the budget cherry as well. We normally get reports in when is it October, December, January, or November? Yeah, right. Okay, so that's also something that needs to be in our work programme, because we will be wanting, I'm sure, to keep an eye on the budget and be raising questions, and indeed we are obliged to be consulted upon that anyway. So that's another tripartite item spread over 3 different meetings. Councillor Goldsack.
I wasn't quite sure whether this was the right place to bring it up, but I'll try, and then we can always put it back later. But I certainly think at some point this committee's got to have a look at the fact that the CPCA have failed to put a bid in for the spending review.
Right, okay, that's potentially a question we could ask the mayor in November.
It's a question we can ask, but scrutinise. I'm trying to understand why is it not happened? I apologise, microphone. Why it hasn't happened, what's caused it to not happen, etc. That's what I thought our role was to do.
We don't have a lead member covering finance, which is perhaps something we ought to be thinking about. We haven't had in the past either, but I'm not sure what you want. Do you want to take that issue forward, and if so, how, other than by simply asking the mayor in November? Councillor Rippon.
Can I suggest that we ask the question first in November, and then first of all see what the answer is, and then take it from there if need be?
That would have been my thought as well. Councillor Coles.
I was just thinking, contingent on how item 7 is received, it might well be that's an ideal thing for a rapporteur to cut across different things and just look at that.
Yeah, that's also an option. Shall we consider that under item 7 then as potentially something a rapporteur could do, but also bear it in mind as a question for the mayor in November? Okay, so with that, is there anything else anybody would like to pitch in for the work programme. We have items then to take us through for the next few months at least. We will want to set a date for a second mayor's question time, won't we? So, and we will also want to see the mayor again as chair of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, and to see the other chairs of committees and their directors. So certainly from the mayor's point of view, if we could ask for a schedule, ask the mayor for a schedule of his availability for each of the overview and scrutiny dates that's in our diary to the end of the municipal year, we will know that when he's already unavailable, and make sure that we can grab his attention and presence for dates that he can currently manage. So the question before us was to discuss and agree items for the work programme and their prioritisation. I think we've done that to an extent in that we have some dates for the next few months work, and to comment as appropriate on what resources may be required. Do you feel you have done that, or is there anything you want to add on that? No? Okay, well, in that case, thank you very much for that. Robert.
Just to sum up, the lead members that have put their hand up for various items, either myself or Anne will be in touch around the scoping document, so we can start populating that and get the work underway on those particular items.
Thank you very much indeed, Robert. So await email. Okay, with that then we move on to item 7, which is overview and scrutiny arrangements, and continuing our work to implement where appropriate the recommendations of the review of our arrangements that took place this spring. I am scheduled, I believe, to be at the board on Wednesday, where the results of the review will be presented to the board. But meantime, we have work to do, and we have a paper from Anne, which invites us to note and comment on the action log, comment on and approve the scrutiny protocol, comment on and approve the rapporteur role description, and comment on and approve the mayor's question time format proposal. So Anne, did you want to say any more on this?
Nothing really further to add, just on the approval of the rapporteur role description. If members are minded to approve that today, we would want to, because we've put in interim arrangements at the moment for lead members and for the lead members. So going forward, it would be wise to bring a report just to confirm the lead member roles and the rapporteur roles. So we'll do that to the next meeting.
I'm sorry, I wasn't quite following that. Are you saying we need a subsequent report on those?
So at I think it was our June meeting, we put in interim arrangements to until this came out. So if we then have the rapporteur role approved today, we would bring a report to October's meeting to just confirm the lead members and the rapporteur roles.
So to put names
to put names to them, yes.
Right. Okay. Yes, we did agree back in the summer that we would have an interim arrangement, so that kind of makes sense, as long as we don't end up making unnecessarily heavy weather of it. I think a brief note just to confirm that need not detain us very long. So we have 4 recommendations then in front of us on this. So do I have anybody wanting to say anything on this paper? Councillor Coles.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was particularly looking at the mayor's question time part of the paper. And I just think, reflecting on our own experience in this committee, is that we ask for public to attend, and I'm not aware at any stage we've had a public member attending. So my concern is around the mayor wishing to make one of our 2 meetings a public meeting. I'm all for that. I'm just wondering about what the process will be to ensure that we do actually get public comment. Because my concern is we come to all these arrangements, we arrive with a potential public meeting, some location, and we get no members of the public. So I'd be interested to learn more on that, about how the mayor intends to support that, because obviously it's going to have to be advertised, it's going to have to be some sort of equipment arrangements to make sure those people who can't come to a particular geographic location can take part, and that we have some notice about what's coming, so that we can somehow disentangle those questions that we might have as members and that the public might have. you.
Thank you very much. Anne, do you have any comments or thoughts on that initially?
I think the plan is to work with our comms team and the Mayor's office to try and make sure that this is promoted so that we can get as much engagement as possible. So.
Yeah, and presumably there would be nothing to stop us as individual members using our whatever channels are open to us to invite our constituents to approach us with questions that they would like to ask or that they would like us to ask if they can't be there. I don't see this as being purely members of the public asking questions, and the report doesn't say it is. Councillor Coles, do you want to come back on that?
Yes, it was just the second question was about any technical solutions, because clearly physical presence is going to be quite difficult.
So we are trying to allow members of the public to attend via Zoom for asking questions at the board meetings going forward. So I think that would be the same for Mayor's question time. Hopefully, I think a lot of our meetings will be at New Shire Hall at Alconbury, which I believe has got the equipment to allow us to do that. So that is the hope.
Thank you. I would just quickly say on New Shire Hall that I would be slightly concerned at using that. We have now, as those of us who are county members, have used the multifunction room at Shire Hall, New Shire Hall, which was billed as being our council chamber of the future. And everybody I have spoken to has agreed that it is in absolutely no way suitable as a council chamber on grounds of size alone, if not layout. It is adequate for the size for a committee meeting. It is totally inadequate for anything larger than that. I'm not expecting us all to be knocked over in the rush of members of the public wanting to come in person to the meeting to ask questions, but we do have to make sufficient allowance for that. And whatever went wrong in the brief for New Shire Hall, the result has been a room that is not fit for purpose for anything larger than a committee meeting. My question was going to be, well, firstly, I think we need to agree a date for that second public mayoral question time. And in doing so, we also need to agree a venue that is sufficiently large to include members of the public to attend in person should they wish to do so. We have used the Burgess Hall at St Ives, which was, I thought, quite a good venue and relatively central to the combined authority area in many ways. So that's perhaps something we could look at, but I certainly wouldn't be expecting us to go to New Shire Hall for a public meeting of any potential size, and I wouldn't want us to end up being there and finding we couldn't actually get everybody in. I've got 3 members wanting to speak, so in order, Councillors Goldsack, Rippeth and Miss Candlin.
Thank you for sharing your opinion, Chair, of New Shire Hall. You are entitled to do so, and I'm sure people, the members and anybody listening has listened to your opinion of something that was measured by your officers, built by your officers, for the reasons exactly why it's there. We haven't had a full meeting there yet because the County Council have such infrequent meetings. I'm sure you will find it's more than fit for purpose when it is used. That's my opinion, which I also want to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your opinion, Councillor Goldsack. Councillor Rippeth.
Going back to the public meeting, public questions arrangement, and I know Councillor Cole's comment was on the technical equipment for people who want to attend virtually and ask questions. And I agree that has to be absolutely in place, although I imagine that's in place in a number of locations across the county. My point is it's a public meeting. You're trying to encourage people to be there, take part, and I would suggest choosing somewhere with adequate public transport options so that you're not reliant on having to attend via a car.
Thank you for that. That's a useful suggestion. Councillor Miss Candlin.
Thank you very much. This chamber has been used for hybrid meetings with a huge screen that comes down, which enables the public. It also holds public in the far side of the hall here. I think this chamber is certainly equipped for both public and hybrid meetings, and we've held them here. and they've worked quite well. But there is always technical problems, and we all know that to our costs at times, but we have held them here and they have been very successful. And on the subject of public transport, 2 minutes walk away, you have a railway station.
Indeed. Thank you very much. It's certainly one to add to the list for the reasons that you've given. Right, okay. So any other comments? Councillor Dew.
Thank you very much. My only comments on the public meeting, i.e. the second mayor's meeting. I think we need to have a protocol in place, because if the public, you know, I suspect there will be stampeded in the lack of response, but I'd like to be proved wrong and be overwhelmed with the number of people who want to speak. What's the protocol going to be if we've got an hour down there? Are we going to say that if the public want to speak for an hour, then we'd have no opportunity, so we then sacrifice our opportunity? I think it's just bringing us back to, again, you know, the fact that I think we need 2 specific meetings, and if the mayor wants to have a meeting with the public, that's absolutely great, and I have no criticism about that at all. But I want to make sure that what we don't end up is in a position where we lose our second opportunity to scrutinise the mayoral position. And as I say, if we don't agree now on how we're going to allocate the time on that, you know, I think the public would quite rightly think if it's a public meeting, they have the right to priority on it, which means we then step back. So I want to avoid losing a second meeting by default, but not saying that the mayor shouldn't have a meeting with the public. He can have that any time he wants anyway. He doesn't necessarily have to do it via scrutiny. And you know, if there's a meeting with the public, perhaps it should be us asking the public to on what we're performing and doing, not necessarily the mayor's role. I'm open in the air. I'm more concerned about the time constraints on it. I.e., if the public do have the hour, we get no opportunity whatsoever. So we're actually depriving ourselves of the potential opportunity of that second meeting.
Well, I'm very relieved indeed to see in the paper in front of us the words in brackets after the length of session will be 1 hour, where it says extra time can be added if required. And I would very much want to consider that requirement in the event that there were a lot of questions. We would be expecting questions in advance, and one supplementary, it says one supplementary follow-up question would be permitted at the meeting. I think I want us to clarify that that is one supplementary question per question, not one supplementary question for the whole meeting. But given an hour or even an hour and a half, that's quite intense for the number of questions that there might be if everyone has a supplementary, given the extent of the answer as well. So we might want to consider a taking the question and answer as read model in order to get through more, although that does make it rather difficult for members of the public to follow if we don't have a system of putting those up on screen for people to see. But yes, I take the point. We will have to look at what questions we have got, allocate time appropriately, and try and be rigorous without curtailing things too much, and that's down to me, unfortunately. But yeah, point taken. Councillor Hay.
I've just been looking at the recommendations here, and it says the recommendation is to comment and approve the format for the mayor's question time. I'm quite reluctant to approve because it clearly says in here to be held twice a year. And if we approve it, we are tying ourselves up to twice a year.
I take that point, and your vice chair and I had quite a robust discussion. We had 2 quite robust discussions with the mayor's office about this. The view I'd like to put is that we have, the current proposal is for 2 formal mayor's question times. In addition to that, the mayor is chair of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, and we will put him on our work plan in that capacity, which gives us an additional opportunity to ask the mayor questions, particularly because so many of the questions we will want to ask, I think, will be around the transport agenda, which is so heavy and intense. In addition to that, then we are able to call upon the mayor at any time to come and answer our questions, and we can make use of that privilege. And the mayor has also said that he is happy to come along in between those as invited to answer questions. So I think that using a combination of 2 question times, his role as chair of transport and infrastructure, and our capacity to call on him at any time, we can certainly make 4 meetings with the mayor a year work within that framework. And I'm inclined to try that and see how it goes. Councillor Hay, I'm happy for you to come back, and then Councillor Van der Weyer has indicated.
You say we've got more than one vice chair because we can have them here as the transport lead. But at that particular meeting, we won't be able to ask him any other questions, only those about transport. So it's not a true 4 times a year for mayor's questions. And I certainly will not be voting to approve. I don't mind voting to comment on, but I will not be voting to approve.
Right, thank you, Councillor Van der Weyer, and then Councillor Corney.
Lost sympathy with what's been said already, and I think it would have been better if we'd had a simpler, more transparent and less rigid structure for this, where we could actually focus on particular areas at more frequent meetings. However, this is the agreement that's been, or the format that's been discussed, and I think we should go for it, but possibly we could add a commitment to review this at the beginning of the next municipal year, for example, in May, so that we're clear that we're going to revisit it, and that we would hope that the mayor would be happy to revisit it with us as well.
Thank you, that's a helpful suggestion, and I'm entirely open to reviewing after a couple of meetings, which we will have had by then, how that has gone, and to look to the new committee next year to put that on the agenda for one of its early meetings in June or maybe July, to talk about that and how that has gone so far. Councillor Corney.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. So, we have on our agenda every meeting, public questions. We don't get any social. Almost playing devil's advocate, though. You've got that on one side, but then on the second side of it, the other side, are we going to be held to the same restrictions of 1 question and one supplementary? Because if we're going to be scrutinising something, it's very difficult elsewhere where we're restricted on what we can, how many times we can go back, or any supplementary questions. We can't get into the long grass. We can't get into to scrutinise things properly if we're not careful. So I'd just be cautious of sort of following those same guidelines for ourselves as opposed to the public questions as well.
Okay, thank you. I think part of the process will be gathering questions in advance for the mayor, so we can see what we've got there, and if the 1 question is a limit, is a severely limiting factor, we can look at how we deal with that. Councillor Davey.
I'd like to approve this. I think, having sat on this committee for quite a while now, even if we've got the mayor twice here, that'll be a significant improvement on what we got from the previous mayor. And I think it's important, therefore, that we're actually able to scrutinise, and if it's in writing and done, that's a start. And then we can then review, as has already been suggested, in the start of the new municipal year, if we find out after having a number of meetings with the current mayor that they're not working to our satisfaction, then we can seek to get improvements on that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I've got also 1 amendment I'd like to suggest to the scrutiny protocol, which is on page 30 of the agenda bundle, and it's in the middle. No, it's about 2/3 of the way down that page, under expectations of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It says the committee will remain non-political. Everything we do is political. What it means is non-partisan, and I think it should say non-partisan, because that is, I hope, the way we will operate and continue to operate, and I think that is what it should say. I think that is the intention of what it meant. So I'd like to suggest, is there consensus around changing that to be clear what it means? Okay, thank you for that. So we're looking at changing that and being clear about 1 supplementary question per question, in the Mayor's Question Time appendix. Now, going back to the recommendations, and I'm not seeing any other hands for comment. Well, I've asked people whether they want to speak, and the rapporteur role is within this, but nobody has sought to cover that. So if you want to say something about the rapporteur role, then Councillor Sharp, please do.
Yeah, I'll say, thank you, Chair. I'll say a couple of things. Councillor Davies sort of said part of what I was going to say, basically, that looking at, we've got 7 meetings potentially till the end of this municipal year. And I understand where Councillor Hayes coming from, but we've got the Mayor coming in November. If we get the Mayor again, say in February or something like that, and also get him here once as the Transport Chairman, that's 3 meetings out of the next 7. So that's not a bad start. And if obviously that doesn't happen for whatever reason, we can then review it. So to try and move it forward, that would be my suggestion and agreement. Touching on the rapporteur, there's 2 things. And I know I mentioned this at the last meeting, and I've still just got concerns, and it's I'm just looking for the page, sorry. Yeah, it's page 26. It's around and I know I mentioned it before about stop, yes, for want of a better word, commenting on the board agendas. And I understand what's behind that, in that, yes, we get papers earlier, we get the plan, etc., etc. At the moment, we've had very little. Therefore, I'm very reluctant to sort of give that up until we've got something else in place. So, but I know it says we're going to, the protocol is going to be developed and brought to the October meeting. So perhaps that's one thing we can maybe discuss more in the October meeting, but that was my first concern. And the second thing is about the rapporteur roles and the lead members. My feeling is, and I just want to make sure people agree with my understanding, is I think the lead members is vital. I think lead members worked by and large very well with the various people who took it on previously and those who have volunteered this time around. So I think personally we should carry on with that role, but also the rapporteur role, I think is more of a one-off situation. And I think it lends itself to what Councillor Goldsack was talking about, is the finance side, certainly looking, because I'm reluctant to wait to November, to be honest, to question the Mayor. I would like to, something to be dug into that for the October meeting. I'm certainly happy if somebody else wants to take it on. I'll gratefully accept their proposal, but I'm certainly prepared to volunteer to have a look at it before and come back with something for the October meeting, which maybe that we then put to the Mayor in November, but at least it gets the ball rolling.
Thank you. That sounds like a very helpful suggestion. Councillor Coles.
Chair, I'd be very happy to be the other member if that makes the rapporteur role work, by having 2 members looking at finance. It's an area I know.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. I mean, I think on the first question about giving up our rights to ask questions, nobody has, at board meetings, nobody has suggested an amendment to the Constitution to that effect. And currently that is still our constitutional right. And I think it's right to hold on to that at the moment until we are absolutely clear, particularly because of the issue we had last month with 3 of the 4 substantive items at the board meeting being done under general exception notice, so that we didn't have the opportunity in advance to pick up those issues. So I think until that is worked through and resolved, and I was given an assurance that would not be the way of conducting business in future, but until we are confident that it is, I think we should continue to maintain hold of that right, even if it doesn't necessarily become the overwhelming focus of our meetings in the future. And on the rapporteurs, I feel a kind of a tension in these papers between the statements about rapporteurs being able to develop expertise. You can't really develop expertise if you're just doing something as a one-off. So my thought about these is the difference between a lead member and a rapporteur, and I'm happy to stand corrected on this, is that the lead member is proactive in looking through the forward plan, the board papers, advanced meetings, asking questions between meetings to get a sense of the direction of travel and the timetables and processes behind all the things that are within their remit, and coming to us and saying, hey, you should have a look at this. With the rapporteurs, it seems to me that the boot is on the other foot, and that for the rapporteurs, we have people who have a particular interest in a particular field. So we now have, you know, sort of finance kind of people. We might have an accommodation person to look at the accommodation strategy, and Councillor Goldsack volunteered himself to do that. And that we say to them, you know, they are nominated for that kind of field of work, but that we say to them, go and do this particular piece of work and come back to us. And we're directing short-term pieces of work by people who are developing expertise in that particular area, but doing it by means of us asking them to go away and do things, rather than the lead members who come to us and say, look, this is my guidance about where you should be looking. Does that Is that about right? And does that help us develop a kind of a working arrangement for how to manage those two particular roles? People comfortable with that? Councillor Coles.
Very happy. I think you've defined it quite neatly. The only issue I have, I suppose, is if I'm a lead member, I have a particular role. If I'm a rapporteur, I have a slightly separate role. But particularly under the role description, you've got the element there of leading discussion and questioning on the matter for which they hold responsibility for a rapporteur. But that particular element would be very useful for a lead member as well. And it may well be that the lead member will have an in-depth knowledge, and it might be the person you'd want to lead the discussion if that particular issue comes up.
I'd agree with that totally. Yes, that makes absolute sense. Councillor Sharp?
Just coming back very briefly, I think when the Scrutiny, Centre for Scrutiny initially made proposals, they were talking about a rapporteur role to dig into things. We had a lead member role set up, and I think it worked quite well. In Councillor Coles in skills, previous Councillor Murphy on housing, certainly were two that really dug into things, and hopefully I haven't missed anybody out. If I have, apologize. But there will be, and Councillor Hay and Davey, that there will pick. So I think that lead member role has worked quite well, because so I'm personally reluctant to abandon that, and I'm pleased we've now got that. But I think that was the initial thoughts was of Ed Hammond, was that the rapporteur role sort of covered both bases. But I think now, Steve Rochelle wanted to come in, but now I think with the lead member role and then the separate rapporteur role, that could work quite well.
Thank you. Rochelle, you wanted to add to this?
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. It would be useful to then look at the rapporteur role post being a post that any member of the committee can just jump in and out of if they're working on a particular project. So for agenda item planning, it would be rapporteur project as opposed to a permanent post holder for the rapporteur role. I hope that makes it clear. Vice Chair, thank you.
Yeah, I think we've begun to crack this. Councillor Goldsack.
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 35 in the description of the rapporteur, the only tiny bit of negativity I've got with it, it says be generally self-serving, i.e. not requiring additional officer support to carry out their role. It just seems a little bit black and white, if I'm honest with you. You like you can't come to me because you're a rapporteur. Oh, you can because you're a lead. That didn't stick quite well, really. I think I understand where it's coming from. You're not wanting, oh, can you do 26-page report and have it by Tuesday? I understand that, but that seemed a little bit restrictive.
I think it says self-servicing rather than self-serving, which is very different matter. Yes, I won't comment, but no, I kind of understand that point. I think the issue there is it suggests we wouldn't be expecting if a rapporteur is taking away a short piece of work for a meeting, of course they'll be able to go away and ask questions. They need to in order to get the information they need, but I wouldn't be expecting a kind of panoply of officer support, convening meetings and all of that kind of thing. But does anybody have any views on that? Michael, Councillor.
Are you trying to clarify that as not requiring sort of administrative support in a sense? Because I mean, 2 bullet points higher, it says that that the rapporteur will make links with relevant CA officers. So clearly, there's an expectation of some interaction with officers, and obviously that will take. If you ask a question of an officer, that will take that officer some time probably to bring the response together. But I don't. If what you're trying to get at is more administrative, or well, I suppose there's an administrative piece, and then is it to do with officers undertaking a specific kind of review or report they would not otherwise do? Is that also what we're trying to aim at?
I think the addition of the word administrative in there might actually be helpful in clarifying what that actually means, and I think that's the thrust of it. Are people happy to add the word administrative? Councillor Goldsack.
Very happy to have that added in, but I think it's somewhat at a juxtaposition with the word on an informal, with the phrase on an informal basis, which is also in it. You know, so what we're going to do? Going to have a chat in the corridor and then report back on it. I mean, look, it's not a big issue. This is not a big issue. Okay, I'm sure we can get around it. But if we're going to make the rapporteur role work, then we need to be able to come into the CPCA, speak to officers, get an informed decision, get an informed update, then the rapporteur report back. Because so take the role that I've stepped forward in today. I'm going to have to come and speak probably to the chief exec and say, okay, where are you at on a building and property strategy? Okay, now for her to have that chat to me and me to scribble down notes and come back to repeat you, I guarantee you won't get a very good report back. So I'm going to need something from them that says, okay, this is what we think our strategy is looking like, blah, blah, blah. So maybe I'm not the right person for that particular role, but I just think those 2 points that Councillor Atkins and myself highlighted there kind of contradict each other a little bit, and I just think that could be better worded.
Right. Again, with all these things, they will evolve. This is all new for us. Shall we see how that goes? I think it might be helpful if Councillor Goldsack, you and I, and perhaps Councillor Sharp met outside this meeting to talk about the accommodation strategy, because I think it might be a slightly bigger question than that. But let's have a conversation, as I think Councillor Sharp and I should anyway, with our lead members as well on the issues that they're working on. Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Chair. It's an interesting one. I think looking at what the Constitution says about what our role is as an overall committee, if a rapporteur comes back with issues, we are then as a committee entitled to seek a report from officers, so we can get there. So I think that's probably the way of covering this particular issue off. I completely understand that problem about exactly how much can I expect an officer to provide me before I can come up with that answer.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, I want to draw this to a conclusion, I think. So we've made a couple of amendments which I think have consensus to some of the details of the wording. So we are going to need to address the recommendations, which are about, let's scroll back up to the recommendations. The recommendations are to note and comment on the action log, which I don't think anybody had. Well, we had a couple of issues about, didn't we? To approve the scrutiny protocol, to approve the rapporteur role description, and to approve the mayor's question time format. So we've discussed all of those things, I think. I'm going to have to put this to the vote because I have received an indication that there will be at least one vote against adopting the recommendations. So can I see those in favour of the recommendations, please? Sorry, before we take the vote, Councillor Coles would like to intervene on what I assume is a point of procedure.
We did mention a few amendments as well. Are those to be incorporated as part of our discussion? I was particularly talking about the rapporteur role in terms of leading discussions, and maybe that should be also added to the lead member role description as well. So is that to be included in the vote?
I don't think we had any dissent on that point. Councillor Davey, I'm reluctant to extend this, but
Sorry, I was just going
gosh, this is getting procedural. I'm hearing a request for a separate vote on items A to C. Are people happy to take those separate as a block of 3 recommendations separately then? Can I see those in favour of recommendations A to C? Can I see those against? And any abstentions? 1 abstention. That is very clearly carried. So now we come to item D and the Mayor's question time format proposal. Can I see those in favour of that proposal, please? Can I see those against? 1, and can I see any abstentions, please? That again is very clearly carried. Thank you very much indeed, members. That's been a useful discussion, and I think we're rather clearer where we're going. Item 8 now is the Combined Authority Board agenda, which you will have seen published. Are there any questions that anybody strongly feels we need to raise at that meeting, which can't be raised by other means? I'm not. Councillor Hay.
I do want to put it on record that I'm a bit concerned that the Combined Authority has been going over 4 years now, and it seems only now are we advertising for independent persons for the Conduct Committee.
Thank you. Is that something that we feel we need to ask the board in public at the meeting, or is that something that you would like us to pursue by other means? I understand that it may well be an audit and governance issue rather than an issue for that committee. Would you like me, for this committee, would you like me to take that away and have a discussion with John Pye, who chairs audit and governance, about that and come back with an answer? Would that be a helpful way forward?
I would be happy with that, yes.
Okay, thank you. So are people agreed that I will go and do that then? Thank you very much. Is there anything else, or are we done on that item? I'm not seeing any other hands. Okay, thank you. And item 9 then is the forward plan. So I'm going to turn to the lead members to ask whether there is anything that they wish to draw to our attention in the forward plan that we should bear in mind that we have not already discussed under arrangements for our own work plan. Any lead members wishing to add anything? Councillor Bagent.
Chair, I note that the transport plan for the Combined Authority, the report back has been moved back a month from September to October. I'm acutely aware that this transport plan is necessary to coordinate with the Greater Cambridge Partnerships plans for the future of the city centre, or no, Cambridge city centre, sorry. We all have city centres, don't we? And I'm just thinking, if the mayor is under pressure in this direction, which is quite understandable to me, that as this is a almost duplication of work for the Cambridge city centre, that as a method of saving money, as a method of speeding things up and making sure there's no blockages to the GCP consultations, that we could use the considerable, or the mayor could use the considerable expertise that the GCP has as a resource, and actually work with the GCP on his future, or his refreshment of the future plan for transport. And what I'm sort of suggesting is that would it be feasible for the mayor to put somebody onto the GCP board and for them to undertake the main part of the responsibility of refreshing the mayor's plan for the city centre? Now, I know that's quite long and a long expert or question really, but I think that the GCP has the expertise. They need the mayor to get his plan done, and it's possible that it may fall by the wayside a bit. We can't afford for that to happen. The GCP needs to be able to progress with its consultations. And so could they not work together on something? That's what I'm saying.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Bagent. Councillor Davey, was your intervention on this point, or was it on something different?
It was going to be on something different, very brief one, but I'll solve.
If we could then just cover off the point that Councillor Bagent has made. Could we ask him as lead member for transport to go away and ask those questions as to the impact of the delay in the local transport plan refresh on matters affecting the GCP and its work plan, to ask them what mitigations, if there is an effect, what mitigations they are putting in place, including whether they are considering that relationship as outlined between the work on the LTP and the work of the GCP, and how that might be worked through. Is that, are you happy for us to ask Councillor Bagent to do that as our lead member on transport and come back to us with a response? Yep, okay, thank you very much. Councillor Davey and then Councillor Coles.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was just to alert people to item 25 in combined authority decisions around the one CAM company. It's just to say that it appears that's about the company itself rather than what the Mayor might be proposing to do with regards to transport. And I'm very conscious, certainly from Councillor Goldsack's questions to me about transport, that we do need to pick this up. So it's just to reassure the committee that I'll pick this up with the Mayor in due course and feedback accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hay.
Yes, item 27 on page 59, bus service reform. It's a key decision coming before the Combined Authority Board in October, which is to seek approval for the publication of the bus service improvement plan and approval of the outline business case to go to public consultation. Can I just say, when we were talking about how we work as a committee going forward, it was mentioned that information could be shared on an informal basis via email. This is a case in point where I think it would be handy if as early as possible, this could be shared with members of this committee, so that when the transport plan comes before us in October, we fully understand what they're seeking to do as far as the bus service is concerned. And if we can see it early enough, we could perhaps add into that where we think it could be improved, or where we think the actual consultation is not wide enough, or whatever.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hay, and as lead member, I'm sure you have our blessing and encouragement to seek the information that you need and share that with us so that we are fully apprised of what's happening. Councillor Atkins.
Thank you, Chair. There's a key decision of the Combined Authority Board on at their October meeting around changes to procurement, particularly with a view to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I'd like to suggest that I take a look at some of that paperwork in advance and bring any concerns I have to the October meeting. I wouldn't anticipate that being particularly controversial, but I will go and look at that more substantially in November. The Combined Authority is proposing to respond to the Independent Commission on Climate Change. So that's a key decision on the 24th of November. That may be a slightly larger piece of work, and again, I'd suggest well, may well be a suitable subject for Mayor's question time shortly before.
Thank you very much, Councillor Atkins. And indeed, in October at the board meeting, there is a discussion about the future FENS and the Combined Authority's role within that. That is just one enormous piece of work, and among a number of enormous pieces of work on the FENS. And I think it might also be worthwhile gathering some information about how the Combined Authority sees itself fitting into an enormously crowded field at the moment on what's going on in the FENS. It's really a full-time job keeping up with that, and it's tremendously important and interesting. Anything else? Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Chair. Item 42 is the Community Renewal Fund bids update. This has been somewhat delayed for some time now, and I'm just wondering whether that's potentially a bit late, and maybe you want to look at something about the impact of the delay on any of the bids that have gone in. I'm particularly thinking about how the money is likely to be spent in terms of the underspend on the schools budget, whether that might be diverted into some of those other areas.
Right, okay. Thank you. How do you want to progress that?
I think probably I need to go and talk to John T. Hill and just work out where we are in terms of, I appreciate we don't know the information around the CRF yet, so we'll need to look into that. I'm happy to take that forward.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, thank you very much indeed, members. So there's a lot of questions to go away and ask, and I think that's been quite useful. So with that then, we've done the review of the forward plan. Item 10 is the last item on our agenda, which is the date of the next meeting. It is not, as in the published papers, in November 2020, but is in fact on the 25th of October 2021 at 11 AM. And according to my notes, that's going to be back here again. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And hopefully by that time we will have got a better understanding of which door to use to get in. So with that, thank you, members. Thank you, officers and everyone who supported this meeting. And see you soon.